We are going to be making an animal portrait with pencil shading. So it's going to be an enlarged, this one is a tiger, looks like a very angry one. And you're going to be making the drawing, and you're only going to be using pencil and pencil shading. And the idea is to use different values of shading, just like we've done with colored pencil before, to show the different variations of your animal. So what you're going to do is you find a picture, you can find an image online, or if you have a copy of one. Some people like to just draw in their pets, which that would be great too. But what you're going to do is you're going to start drawing this out. And one of the things that I always like to show people is whenever you're trying to draw a picture, especially with an animal or a cartoon, I always start with the nose first and I work out. It helps a little bit so you can gauge where the picture is going to be. So if I'm going to start with the nose, and now these are going to be pretty large. You can do it on regular size paper or you can do it on larger paper. It's completely up to you. Now some of the times when the pictures are a little harder to see, that's why sometimes if you do it on Google search or something, you can always enlarge it on the screen. It's a little bit easier. So there I have the nose, and then I'm going to do the snout. And also when you're doing this, keep in mind you want to make sure, oh, I just noticed when I did that, I made the snout way too long. So you want to make sure proportionately that it's accurate. So I have this part here is going to be like the mouth. And then it comes down like this. Now, because animals, depending on the animal that you do, usually has fur or it has scales or anything like that, you want to incorporate that into your picture. So just really lightly, just so I can see like that's where the fur would be. Now, the next part would be the eyes, and they come out right from here. So I'm going to have the eyes here. So just kind of a basic idea of where the eyes would be. And then a lot of times in my picture, it's really dark, so you're not going to see it real well. And then you have, you know, the basic parts for like the eyes, and then the top of the head, and then you continue through and you'll make the ears. As you go through, obviously the basic drawing of it is going to be pretty minimal just because you're not going to see a lot to it. Now on this one, like here, like you don't really see its neck, you just see a whole bunch of just darker fur. So I'm just going to go in and add some lines here so it looks like darker fur. So technically that could be my drawing right there, and then that would be the rest of the body. Now the idea is once you have it drawn in, you're going to do blending or shading. Now there's a couple of options. You can use blending tools, which is just kind of rolled up paper that I'll have at class that you can use. If you don't have blending tools, your finger is the best tool around. Otherwise, Kleenexes work really great. That way you don't get your fingers all dirty. But the idea is you're going to start going through here with your pencil and you're going to start shading things in. And I usually start with the lighter stuff first because obviously once it goes super dark, it's a lot harder to erase. So I'm going to take and I'm going to make some lines. So this part would be almost white in the picture. So I'm going to do my lines kind of far apart. And then up here, obviously it's darker, and so it's still fur. So I'm going to do my lines a little bit closer together. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can use a blending tool, and if you hold it sideways, you never want to hold it up and down, sideways, you can take and it'll smudge in between, and so it looks like it's kind of filling in where that fur is, and it gives you kind of like a furry look to it. If you're doing anything that is supposed to be lighter, you can shade in those just really lightly. You're still going to see the lines, obviously, because you want it to look like fur. But it'll shade it in a little bit more, and it'll give you the idea of being a lighter color. So here, because it's darker on the side, I would go through here and make it darker. And the idea is to not outline anything on your animal. We want it to look as realistic as possible. So you're going to need to use those values and the colors in it to make sure that you can see where each part is. So if I make it darker here around the edge of the snout, from a distance, it's going to read like it's almost outlined, but in actuality, it's not. It just has that darker fur. So if you can see the difference. When I go through and I'm going to do like a dark section for like the nose, perhaps, like you're going to actually color it in really dark. Now, if you're smudging things, you don't have to smudge everything. You can just smudge certain things. So, for example, like on my animal, usually a nose is really smooth. It doesn't usually have a texture. So when I'm coloring this, I'm coloring it in really dark. And then what I would do is I could use either the blending tool or I can use Kleenex or my finger, and you can smudge it. And what it'll do is it'll give you that really like smooth texture, so it looks almost more like a nose would be. Now on this one, because inside the picture, it's really hard to see like where the nostrils are. So the nostrils are actually darker inside of this one. So I would go really dark. And then I actually could do a little bit lighter through here, just so I can see where the difference is between the nostril and the rest of the nose, and then I could smudge it again. So from a distance, my nose would read as really dark. However, you can still see the light and the dark values in it. Now the plan is to take and do all of the blending throughout your whole entire paper, and you want to have at least 3 values. So you want to see a light, which is like a white section, a medium, which would be kind of like in the mid-tone gray area, and then a dark, which would be like the blacks. And the idea is just to practice with the pencil and see how well you do. One of the things with pencil, it's going to get on your hands probably. So a lot of times I usually say if you have another piece of paper, if you can take and put the paper underneath your hand while you're working on it, it'll help with the smudges on the paper, and it'll also help with smudges on your hand. So the requirements are you need to draw an animal. It has to be at least the animal's face. It can be the whole body. It's completely up to you. But you want it to make sure it takes up the whole entire paper so that it's pretty large. And then if you have any space left over in the picture, to incorporate background. So I could incorporate, leaves. I can have grass in the background, trees, whatever else you would think that would be in the background of your picture. And then you would shade those accordingly. So that is what you need to do for the animal portrait. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. Shading can be kind of tricky sometimes. And so I just want to make sure everybody does it correctly.